Great, thank you. Whoops. Yeah, that is something I will go right over the stage over. I am classic at that kind of stuff. It's one of the reasons why I don't wear heels on stage is because I'm a hockey player, which means that my ankles are made for skates, not stilettos. So if I wear any kind of heels up here, my one friend jokes and says, when you wear heels, it just means you're closer to God. I kind of reject that idea and say, well, I'm okay a couple inches shorter and a couple of inches away. I think he's big enough to reach me. So, yeah, so hopefully I don't go careening over that, but if I do, I warned you. Thank you so much for your introduction. As I said, I am from upstate New York, so to be honest, the snow this year was kind of normal for me. Rochester actually gets twice as much snow, I don't know if you know this, as Boston. Now, this year may have trumped that, because this was an unusual kind of snow thing, but it seems like it either dumps or nothing here, kind of dump, nothing, and Rochester just keeps going. We just get it. I remember Halloween, kids would be trick-or-treating, and it'd be snowing, inches, and they're just out and about. So that's kind of where I come from, and that's kind of more what I'm used to. So being in Boston isn't a massive change for me. But also, just so you know a little bit more about me, I actually spend a lot of my time talking to people who say, I think this whole God thing is crazy. I'm like, yes, I love you. You are my new best friend. So tell me why you think God is crazy. Why is Christianity crazy? And so I talk to people about a lot of their issues and struggles that they have with the Christian faith. I understand that. It makes sense to me. I understand fully that in order for you to accept Christianity, here it is. In order for you to accept Christianity, you need to know it's more than just a book that somebody's telling you to hold on to, filled with a bunch of fairy tales. In all fairness, I understand that. And so a lot of what I do is speaking to people who have these kind of questions. And so this question, why do I need God, is actually one of the most popular questions that I get. And I understand it. People are wondering, I'm fine. My life is fine. Yet you tell me that I need God. It's just as if you went to a doctor's office and the doctor said to you, hey, how you doing? You're like, oh, I'm great, everything's good. And they're saying, great. I'm giving you a list of 14 prescriptions that you need to go and get filled out at one of your 3 CVS's in one city block here. What's the deal with that? What is up with that? Another CVS, really? Anyways, so they give you these 14 prescriptions and you go off to get them done and you're like, okay, I feel fine though, why am I getting prescriptions? Why are you telling me I'm sick? Nothing is wrong with me. And I feel like sometimes when people say, you need God, it's why? My life is great, things are fine, family's fine, health is fine, school is fine. What's the big deal? And so I completely understand that. So let me just briefly say a couple things why I think it's important for us to even look at this question. I think number one, the idea of truth matters. What is true matters. You are all here in this university because you believe that the information you are getting is truth. Not because, maybe some of you question it, but when you're sitting in class, you're trusting that the teachers are telling you the truth. They're not lying to you, okay? The truth about life in a variety of ways, it matters. Well, the second thing is we never want to replace physical contentment with spiritual contentment. Understand that those are actually two separate things. Our physical bodies can be perfectly well, but doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with our spiritual. And finally, if God exists, it does have serious implications for your life. It does matter. Because what if he has a message for you? What if he's created you for a reason? What if there's something he wants to tell you? So it matters. It does matter. In Christianity, God is relational. And if he's relational, he wants you to be relational with him. And don't mistake that rejection of him is somehow a freedom of being relational with anything, or a freedom of worshiping anything. Let me see if I can talk about this idea of worship any further. When I say the word worship, this is what I mean. This idea of reverence or giving honor to or dignity to something that you deem has merit or value. Okay? So this can actually manifest itself in a variety of ways. 3 that I'm going to look at today, this is not comprehensive, but 3 that I'm going to look at today is this first picture, where you have this idea of forced or duty worship, where somebody is commanding you to worship them. You do because you're forced to, and they give you nothing in return. Okay? You just do it because you're forced. You're not receiving anything good or any kind of benefit from it, other than maybe saving your life or something. Okay? The next one is what I call is another kind of worship, which is kind of like a worship to a silent object. So you're worshiping something voluntarily, like some people may worship like their cars or some other kind of possession that they have. You are voluntarily worshiping this object, but it's not giving you anything back in return. But at least you're not being forced to. You're doing this voluntarily. And the third one is worship that results from gratefulness. So this idea that you are worshiping something because of something it has done for you. So you are grateful. So it's a two-way kind of a street. You are doing something for it. It is doing something for you. And the reason for your worship is because of what has already been done for you. Have you ever given thought to what you worship? What you worship will transform your whole life because your whole life is oriented around the object of that worship. Many of you may recognize this silhouette of this person here. If you do, you might want to not say because you might be embarrassed. But it is Justin Bieber. Yes, Justin Bieber. He has made his presence into Harvard here. I've brought him in just for you all. So I have a little sister. She is 16 right now. When she was 13 years old, her and her good friend wanted to go see Justin Bieber in Toronto, Canada. Now, I live in Rochester, New York at this time. Toronto's like a 3-hour drive, okay? Just a week before, a couple days before Justin Bieber was going to be in Toronto, he was going to be in Buffalo, which is an hour and a half away. But that wasn't good enough, because we had to go to Canada to see Justin Bieber, because that's his home country. So my little sister has this plan. They get tickets, and they have a ride, and they're going to go see Justin Bieber, and I'm going to wave as they go down the driveway. Well, a few days before they're supposed to go on their trip, what happens? Their ride falls through. So guess who gets to take them to the Justin Bieber concert? Yes, feel bad for me now. This is when you go, ugh, because that's what I did. So in the car we go, drive the 3 hours to a completely different country to go see Justin Bieber talk. We get there, and we have to go a day early. So he's going to be singing in Toronto. We actually have to go to Stratford, Ontario. If you know anything about Justin Bieber, he was born in Stratford, Ontario. So we have to go a day early so we can go to Stratford, Ontario and go see, there's actually a map. If you go to the Stratford, Ontario website, they actually have a map of Justin Bieber's favorite spots and the places that he walked to. So we had to walk across the canal because that's where Justin Bieber walked. And we had to go to the pizza shop and touch the door handle and touch the chairs. And the lady's like, this is where he sat. So we had to sit at that table. And then, you may have seen the YouTube video of him playing the Jennifer Knapp song. It's a song that made him really popular. And so that's sitting on these stairs to this well-known theater in the area. Well, I've sat on those stairs. I have my picture taken on those stairs. I've done it all. Now, when we were there, I remember we met this one young lady who was from Germany. Yes, you heard me right, from Germany, to come see Justin Bieber in Toronto. This is the 6th time she has come to see Justin Bieber. And so her and her dad are there, and meanwhile, they're on Twitter. They're tracking his every move. Where is he? Is he in Stratford? Are we going to see him? What's going on? So they're tracking him on Twitter. They're tracking him on Facebook. They're trying to find him everywhere. And here I am with all these little teenage girls just kind of, trucking along with everything. And we go to the concert the next day, we go to the venue the next day where Justin Bieber's mom is signing books. Yes, I've met her too. So we are there, and as I'm walking into this bookstore to go to where Justin Bieber's mom is signing books, there's these girls that are bawling. So I'm like, oh my goodness, what happened? Did she cancel? What's going on? And I'm walking up the stairs, and they're bawling because they met Justin Bieber's mother. And I was like, now this is interesting. So you're telling me you didn't even fully meet Justin Bieber, but you met his mother. But that was so close to the object of which so much of your affection and your time is being directed towards, that it just made you that emotional and that completely beside yourself to boo-hoo in public like that. And it blew my mind. This idea of just extreme worship of a particular individual. The reality is that there's millions of gods for us to worship. The question isn't, do I worship a God or don't I? It's really, which one is it? Which one is the God? Which one is the object of our worship? So I ask you, what does your God look like? What is it like? Is it success? Is it intellect? Money? Being seen? Possessions? Academics? How about acceptance? Being accepted and fitting in. What does your God give you? Or does it fail you? And if you mess up, does it forgive you? What does it do when you don't meet its expectations? Maybe you didn't get as good of a grade as you thought you could have. Maybe you didn't look as great as you thought you could have. Maybe you weren't as accepted as you thought you could be. What happens then? What happens to this God? And the answers to these questions are why we see so many people that seem to have it all in life. Everything is great, everything is good. But yet they're tormented on the inside. See, where your heart is, there also your treasure will be. Many of you have seen the movie Harry Potter. This is from Harry Potter. This particular scene is from Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Sorry that my head is like blocking half of the screen here. It's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And in this particular scene, Harry walks into a room and he sees a very large mirror. And this mirror, he walks up to it and he looks into it. And what's interesting about this mirror is that when he walks into it, he doesn't see himself. He sees his parents, which is weird. Imagine walking up to a mirror and you see your parents or somebody else. And so while he's looking into this mirror, Dumbledore walks in. And I want to read you a little bit of this conversation, this interaction between him and Dumbledore. Dumbledore says to Harry, he says, "I see that you, like so many before you, have discovered the delights of the Mirror of Erised. I trust by now you realize what it does. Let me give you a clue. The happiest man on earth would look into the mirror and see only himself exactly as he is." Harry says, "So then it shows us what we want, whatever we want, right?" Dumbledore says, "Yes and no. It shows us nothing more or nothing less than the deepest and most desperate desires of our heart. But remember this, Harry, this mirror gives us neither knowledge or truth. Men have wasted away in front of it, even gone mad. And that's why tomorrow it's going to be moved to a new home, and I must ask you not to go looking for it again. It does not do well to dwell in dreams, Harry, and forget to live." My question for you is, what treasure is in your mirror? If you were to look into your mirror, what would be looking back at you that gives you the deepest and most longing desires of your heart? For some of us, it's a deity looking back at us in the mirror that we actually wrestle with most of the time. So why do we worship God? Because we will worship something. And nothing else in this world will be as accepting, as forgiving, as fulfilling as someone who loves you, even if you haven't succeeded. St. Augustine says this, "Thou awakest us to delight in thy praise, for thou hast made us for thyself, and our heart is restless until it rests in thee." Worship. What do we worship? I want to move on and take a look at this idea of identity, who we are, how do we define ourselves, and the value of life. Many of you familiar with this, well, maybe you won't, I might be dating myself here, but the song Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. And, okay, good, maybe a few of you are. And the chorus says, "I don't want the world to see me because I don't think that they'll understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am." Who are you? How do you define yourself? How do you even know who you are? Do you define yourself by your cars, shoes, athletic ability, IQ? Without God, how do you define yourself? Is it based off of something that you do? That's the way society says it. Your identity is based off of your contribution to society. Whatever you do determines who you are. But see, there's a problem with that. That works out great for maybe a doctor. But what about someone who was born with an intellectual disability? Or maybe what about who's the identity of someone who maybe went to a school that wasn't an Ivy League? If we are defined by who we are, then are we just living our whole life to try and please others? Do we ever really know? How do we figure this out? And the standards that society gives us are subjective. They can change. Yeah, we may say doctors are great now, but you know what? Maybe 15 years from now, we'll elevate physicists. For all you physicists in the room, you lucked out. But what about everybody else? And now who are you? Now your identity has changed. As an athlete, I remember my first game in college hockey. I didn't play in the States, I played abroad. But my first game, I scored a hat trick. If you know anything about hockey, hat trick is 3 goals, soccer, it's all the same kind of thing. Didn't score again for 6 games. Went completely cold for 6 games. So frustrating. How do you go from like a hat trick and people think, okay, she might be a good goal scorer, to not scoring at all? Now who am I? Have I changed? Is my identity constantly going up and down? The idea of determining who we are based on what we do is a popular one held by many people of the more naturalistic worldview. So let's carry that out to its natural conclusion. You are who you are based on what you do. If there is no God, let's carry that out and see what that looks like. Thankfully, Richard Dawkins has graciously done this for us. Many of you may have seen this post, this Twitter post that happened. I will read it to you, and no, it's a really bad picture. It's what happens when you take a picture of a screen. It looks like this. But this is actually his Twitter feed. I actually was not on Twitter until recently. I was resisting the urge to be a twit, but now I've joined. And so here I am, and here's Richard, and he says some really interesting things on there. So this is actually what he says, and I'll read it to you because you probably can't quite see it. A woman tweets in, and she says, I honestly don't know what I would do if I were pregnant with a kid with Down syndrome. Real ethical dilemma. So Richard Dawkins tweets back, abort it and try again. It would be immoral to bring it into the world if you have the choice. As you probably have guessed, he got a lot of flack for this. One mother tweeted back saying, I would fight to my last breath for the life of my son, and her son actually does have a genetic condition, and she was saying that. She says, no dilemma. And then it goes on to say down here that Dawkins later defended his view, saying he would not apologize for approaching moral philosophical questions in a logical way. It does sound pretty crazy, doesn't it? But the reality is, he wasn't being a cruel naturalist. He was carrying out his beliefs to the natural progression of them. If you are who you are and your identity is based on what you do, then someone who can't meet to society standards does not have a right to live. He was being consistent. Now that is hard for some of us to hear. I recognize it and I understand that. But you have to understand that if you hold that naturalistic perspective, he's telling you how you should believe. The fact that we don't believe this and that we don't accept this kind of idea is that people unknowingly borrow ideas that human life has value from the Judeo-Christian perspective. And they don't realize they're doing this, because in the Judeo-Christian perspective, it tells you that your life is valuable. It tells you that. See, what if we let God decide on our identity? What if we took it out of the hands of man and gave it into God? What would he say? Well, God says that your identity is intrinsic within you. What do I mean by intrinsic? Intrinsic, it means that it relates to your essential nature. It belongs to you way deep inside before you've ever had a chance to earn it. Unlike your actions, which are manifestations of your character, your personality, your strengths and weaknesses, your identity cannot change. Let me see if I can expound this further. What do I mean by belongs to your essential nature? I mean this. I mean that when I say you have an identity, I'm saying that you are created in the image of God. Let me see if I can explain that to you. What does that mean? It means that not only is this inherent in you, but it's a permanent, essential part of you, and it adheres to you. You can't get rid of it. You can't change it. You didn't earn it, and you can't lose it. You have an intrinsic worth and value to your life before you ever did anything. And this image that you have is of the one after whom you were ultimately created, which is God. See, we are created in the shadow or likeness of God, to be who God is and to do what God does. So in other words, we are to be loving, just like he's loving. We are to be relational with people, have friends and family, just like he's relational. We're supposed to be intelligent and be people who communicate. These are all attributes of God, and we are created to be like him in these ways. So your value isn't based on your IQ. It's not based on if you have an intellectual disability or not. It's not based on your sports, your grades, your value to society, what society says that how they value you. It is not based on any of that. It was not in your hands in the first place, so you can't lose it, and nobody can take it from you. Because we're created in the image of God, we are not mistakes. He knows every intricate detail about us and our physical body. Our complexity was intentional. We are one of his masterpieces. I was recently in Hungary, and one of the things I really love to do, and this only affirmed it, is when I go abroad, is to go to cathedrals or churches. If you can, whenever you travel, go to a church or cathedral. It blows your mind just to see the art that is in these places. And I was in a cathedral in Hungary, and it was absolutely beautiful in Budapest. It was absolutely beautiful. And I remember just standing there looking around me, and this particular song came to my mind, these lyrics of this particular song by this group called Need to Breathe. And it says this. It says that cathedrals have tried in vain to show the image of your face. But we are, by God's design, the signature of the divine. I'll say that again. But we are, I can tell I have some Need to Breathe fans. It's okay, it's all right. I'm here for you. I'm supporting you here, okay? I'm giving you a shout out, okay? So it says, but we are, by God's design, the signature of the divine. It's us, not these cathedrals that have all these beautiful images and beautiful artwork. They don't compare close to the beauty that we give out. Along those same lines, the atheist philosopher John Gray says this: once we have relinquished Christianity, the very idea of the person becomes suspect. Dr. Ravi Zacharias says that you will never find meaning to be meaningful until you find out the purpose for which you were created. What God does is give you the grandest dignity when he tells you that you were created in the image of God. You are intricately and masterfully created by the great creator himself. Your identity isn't given, it's inherent within you. And nothing that society offers you will ever match the identity that God gives you and how beautiful he sees you. So why do we need God? Because I think we're going to have serious identity complexes the minute we live our lives as pure naturalists, the way Richard Dawkins is encouraging us to do. Many people don't see his view, but once again, that's because they're borrowing from religious views that they don't recognize they are, saying that all life is valuable. But let's move on to the reason why we were here, which is another important question to look at when we look at this idea of why do we need God. Without God, life has no meaning, okay? That's a pretty bold statement, so let me try and explain that. Why do I say that? Because it makes no difference whether or not humans or the universe or plants or animals or anything existed at all. It just doesn't matter. Okay? There's no ultimate meaning. There's no goal to life because man is the blind product of matter plus time plus chance. Okay? The philosopher William Craig describes it like this: because the universe itself carries with it no intrinsic meaning, any meaning attributed to it has been given to it by someone. If there is nothing in this universe saying that the universe matters at all, then there cannot be meaning in anything done on this universe for it or for those living there. Suppose the universe had never come into being. It's going to end at some point, so why does it matter that it ever existed in the first place? The same goes on for the human race. If the universe will end, mankind will end. So it makes no ultimate difference that it ever existed. If the universe has no ultimate meaning, then your existence cannot either. Therefore, what you did or what you do on this earth only has relative significance, not an ultimate significance. At best, your life was significant only in comparison to other things. Listen to what the atheist Bertrand Russell says about this. He says that man is the product of causes which had no provision, a prophetic vision as in a dream, of the end they were achieving. That his origin, his growth, his hopes and fears, his loves and his beliefs are but the outcome of accidental collocations of atoms, that no fire, no heroism, no intensity of thought and feeling can preserve an individual life beyond the grave. That all the labors of the ages, all the devotion, all the inspiration, all the noonday brightness of human genius are destined to extinction in the vast death of the solar system, and that the whole temple of man's achievement must inevitably be buried beneath the debris of a universe in ruins. All these things, if not quite beyond dispute, are yet so nearly certain that no philosophy which rejects them can hope to stand. Only within the scaffolding of these truths, only on the firm foundation of unyielding despair, can the soul's habitation henceforth be safely built. That's it. Here today, gone tomorrow. Nothing's any different because you existed. Obviously, we impact people around us and we impact this world that we're in, but ultimately it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The universe is doomed anyways. But is that how we live life? How functional is that for us to live life, knowing that ultimately it just doesn't even matter anyways? Now, I think some people have no problem living life that way. But I think several people, many people, if not most people, I'll guess, have a hard time thinking that life is completely meaningless and what they do doesn't matter. One psychologist in particular says this. She says, stop living as though you need to have one major purpose for your life. Instead, find what gives your life meaning today. Look at your life and begin to feel all is well. Quit weighing yourself down with the need for purpose and your fear of feeling unfulfilled at life's end. Instead of seeking to have it all, seek to feel as if you have it all already. Your life will unfold with more ease and grace. This is how people are encouraged to get through the fact that life has no meaning. Just feel like it does. Make it feel like it does. Just stop trying to hold on to this big idea that it has an ultimate meaning. Just let it go. And just make yourself feel like it does. Well, what is the Christian perspective on this? The Christian perspective is this. Our meaning and purpose, I'll read this and I'll kind of explain this a little bit. It says, our meaning and purpose is to understand the goodness of God and enjoy him forever. When you know your meaning, you can understand your purpose or why you were created in the first place. After human enthrallment on earth finds its limit, only a limitless God will still bring amazement, wonder, love, and truth to this world. God created this beautiful world filled with plants, animals, people, and we are here to enjoy it, to respond to the beauty that's around us and the beauty that's found in him. The meaning and purpose of our life is to know him and experience this whole miracle of life that we see around us all the time. I know the BBC would probably be really angry for me to say it, but I feel like the biggest proof of the existence of God is the Planet Earth series. It blows my mind. If any of you have ever seen Planet Earth, it's amazing when they go down to these miles and miles below the ocean and see these really crazy looking animals that nobody's ever seen before. That's so cool. I just don't understand how people don't find that to be so cool. So I just think this is a part of what we're here for, is to experience these things. I am a huge fan of killer whales, orcas. I love them. I want to swim with them so badly. But when I go to a whale watch or when I see them on TV, I'm just so oh my goodness, I love this stuff. What if we're here to experience and to be joyous and to be glad at the goodness and the greatness of the things that we see around us? This is part of it. This is what we're supposed to experience. Experience the beauty of this creation. Experience the beauty of God. If you live life as if there is no meaning, apart from anything you do, are you borrowing the fact that your life is indeed relevant from theism? I want to take a look at one more point on the topic of morality before I let you guys go. I recently had the, I don't want to say privilege, but I had the opportunity to travel to Auschwitz in Poland in February of this year. It's something I encourage any of you at some point in your life, if you can handle it, if you have the ability to go, you should go. It was much bigger than I realized. I had no idea the vastness of it. I had no idea that there were several different camps even. I thought it was one place. It's several different camps. And I was able to visit 2 of them because the third one isn't standing anymore. But this gentleman here, Dr. Joseph Mengele, was kind of known as the doctor of death, or the death doctor at Auschwitz. He conducted a lot of experiments on people. And he had a fascination with children and especially twins. So if he found a pair of Siamese twins that were brought in, he would try and see if he could cut them apart. Or he would compare twins to each other and do different experiments to see if I do this to this one twin, what happens to the other. These kind of things. He would put children in the ovens alive and burn them alive. I mean, the man was cruel. But I think one of the things that shocks me the most of what he did is that he would perform regularly vivisections. If you don't know what a vivisection is, I'll tell you. It is basically a dissection of a woman who's pregnant while she is still alive. And he would cut them open to take a look at their babies and fetuses while they are alive and experience this. This is what this man did. Now, why when I talk about him do I see your faces cringe and people's heads bow down? Do I have to tell you that this is wrong? Or do you automatically react within yourself? Is there something within you that's telling you that this is not okay, that this is not the way that we should treat people? This is not the way that we should treat children. See, as a Christian, I believe in the idea of objective morality. I believe that there is a moral code that transcends any of us. Not something that we picked, but something that transcends any one of us. But someone who is not a Christian would have to say, reject that idea of an objective moral code, because then they would have to answer the question, where does that objective moral code come from? Who put it there? What put it there? A purely naturalistic view simply says that objective morality a purely naturalistic view cannot say that objective morality exists, because science is morally neutral, right? Science can't test morals. There's certain things that science can't do. It can't tell one woman that she's prettier than the next. It can't tell someone that blue is a better color than pink, okay? It can't make moral judgments. It can tell us how to send a man to the moon, but it can't tell us to share the moon rocks while we're there, okay? So there's certain limitations in science. So science really can't test morals. The atheist professor, Michael Roos, says that morals are illusions. He says morality is a collective illusion. He's a professor, an atheist professor of philosophy at Florida State University. Morality is an illusion, and he has to say that. But yet we turn on the news and we see ISIS, and we don't feel like that's an illusion. And even worse, people actually want to do something about what they see. Do illusions like command an action out of us? Do illusions make us want to act? I was speaking with a friend of mine who actually does not go to this school. He goes to another school in Boston area. And he is a atheist, naturalist, and I was talking to him about this idea of morality. And he said to me, you know, he denies that there has to be an objective morality. He has to. He has to say that there's no source that gives us an objective morality. And so I asked him, I said, okay, so tell me this. If I had a little girl in front of me and I started cutting her face, would you stop me? And he said, I would stop you. And I said, why? Because you can't tell me it's right or wrong. He said, you're right. I would stop you not because I think it's right or wrong, but because I think it's not good for society. I said, okay, so you're going to determine what is morally right or wrong based on how it benefits society. So then what's the problem with his argument? The minute that I show him that cutting a girl's face is good for society, is beneficial for society, now he can't stop me. The minute I give him some great philosophical reason why it is better for her to go through this or better for me to do this, now what's he going to say? I'm not saying that you have to believe in God to do good things. I would never say that, and that's not a fair statement to make. There are people all around this world, a variety of different beliefs, who do many, many good things. But what I'm saying is, how do you determine what is good? How do you know what is wrong, what is evil? As a Christian, I can tell you that something is good or something is bad, because whatever God tells me is good is something that comes out of his very nature. So in Christianity, God is, and actually in a philosophical sense, the idea of God is that he is the highest in perfection, the highest in knowledge and power, and the highest of anything that you can think of. So if God is perfectly good, then anything he tells me, anything he commands out, tells me to do is something that's going to come out of his very nature, his very being. So for example, love is good because God is love. It is who he is. A perfectly good, a perfectly just God can command certain things, and I can trust him. Being forgiving, being merciful, being gracious are good because these are attributes of God. But for someone who doesn't believe in God, then I have to ask him, well, why is love good? Why is Boko Haram wrong? On what basis? They don't think they're doing anything bad for their society. Who are you to tell them that you're right and they're wrong? How do you know you're not the one who's wrong? It paralyzes us. The minute we make morality subjective, is the minute that we feel like we can't help other people, we can't protect other people, we can't help save other people from disasters. Because morality is subjective. Let me see if I can wrap this up for you. Why do we need God to exist? Because if he doesn't, many of us need to drastically change the way that we view life. How we define ourselves. What is the significance of our existence? Does it matter how I live? Does it matter how others live? We borrow beliefs from Christianity all the time and just don't realize it. But meanwhile, we reject the very God that it's pointing towards. The idea that your life is valuable, that you're here for a reason, that you're to live a certain way, that you feel like you need to live a certain way? What is that pointing towards? And why do we reject that tugging, that pull? The irony of it all is that it's God. God is what makes the whole thing beautiful. Yet it's who we reject. Many of you may have heard of the author Philip Yancey, and he's my favorite Christian author. And he talks about this idea of a fish tank. Now, maybe many of you guys had pets when you were younger. I did not have a pet. Well, I did not have a pet that was not in a cage. My mother was not going to deal with anything running around her house. So we had no animals that ran around the house. I had a guinea pig, and I had fish. So I had a fish tank. And what's interesting about a fish tank is that when you go up to a fish tank, you pour food in it, you clean it, you take care of the fish, you make sure the water temperature is right. You do all these things, and you are taking care of these fish. But what's interesting about it is that if I wasn't doing any of these actions, when I would walk up to the tank, what's the thing that the fish do? Is they run and go to the other side of the tank, and they hide in their little houses and castle thingies. And I'm like, come on, dude. I just fed you. I've cleaned your tank. I take care of you. Why do you run from me? Is it because the fish, I'm so big in comparison to the fish? Are they terrified of me because of how big and great I am? But not that I'm really all that great, but they think so we'll let them think that. But if I wanted to communicate to these fish, how could I communicate to them? I could become a fish like them. If I became a fish like them, I could talk to them and they wouldn't run. I could swim with them. I could live life with them and they wouldn't run. They wouldn't be scared of me then. Even though I took care of them as a human, they didn't understand it until I became one of them. This is what Christianity, the beginning of what Christianity teaches. That if God wants to reveal himself to us, he could do it as a lightning bolt, as some people say. But really, to be honest, if a lightning bolt was to strike in front of you, would you really run up to it and embrace it and hug it and love it? Or would you get out of there? Right? You would run the other way. God can't reveal himself to us in a way that is that strong. Or we will run in fear. But what if he came in a way that we wouldn't run, and he came as one of us, as a baby even? Something that you run towards and actually want to embrace and you want to pick up. You'd run towards it. The Bible says that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. If we want to know what God is like, if he wants to reveal himself to us, he does it through Jesus. Jesus is loving, he is kind, he is gracious, he's forgiving. These are all ways that we know that God is like. He demonstrates to us and reveals to us who God is. He grieves at pain when one of his friends dies. He loves children, so we know God loves children. Jesus is gentle and kind. We know God is gentle and kind. In other words, the Bible reveals the essential and specific attributes of God, who he is, why we are here, why he made us, and his plan to redeem mankind through Jesus. So many people tell me that faith is blind, and I just don't think so at all. Faith is a response, an acceptance of God, in response to his demonstration of his existence and acceptance of his call to follow him. It's about you doing. It's not about you doing, but it's about you receiving what he's done for us. His plan for mankind, that we are here to know him, to experience him, perfectly good, perfectly loving God. And even though we've done things wrong, he made a way for that to be fixed too, because a perfect God cannot be in the presence of imperfect people. If a perfect God wants to be in the presence of imperfect people, it makes him not perfect anymore. So he's got to do something about the things that we have done wrong and the things within us. And he does that by taking on the punishment and our shame and embarrassment through Jesus on the cross. And that's the message of Christianity. You have a beautiful identity. You have a beautiful meaning to your life. God guides you. He tells you how to live. And we need this because ultimately we really cannot live with these atheistic, naturalistic perspectives that tell us that our life isn't worth anything ultimately. I will be around for questions afterwards. I know somebody else is going to come up and share a short testimony. Please feel free to talk with me afterwards. I'd be happy to chat with you through any of the things that I talked about. Thank you.